The galactic coliseum roared with the sound of thousands of alien spectators, their voices clashing like thunder against the reinforced walls of the arena. The event was rare, so rare that entire species had traveled light years just to witness it. Tonight, an unmodified human would fight against the most advanced cybernetic warriors the universe had ever produced. A death sentence, or so the aliens thought. On one side of the arena stood KLRA, a towering gladiator from the Vorn Dominion, his body enhanced with liquid metal musculature and adaptive neural processors. His kind had spent centuries perfecting cybernetic warfare, replacing weak flesh with machines. His arms gleamed with plasma-infused alloy, and his eyes glowed with the piercing red of artificial intelligence. On the other side stood a human. No augments. No cybernetics. Just muscle, bone, and blood. His name was Elias Cade. He wore no armor, just simple combat fatigues, his body seemingly unimpressive compared to the cybernetic titan across from him. Yet, when he rolled his shoulders and cracked his knuckles, the watching alien crowd felt something they couldn't explain: dread. The event's host, a serpent-like Malkar named Visk, slithered to the center and raised a clawed hand. Today we prove superiority. His forked tongue flicked the air. We, the enlightened races, have left behind our fragile origins, perfected ourselves through augmentation. Against us, raw biology stands no chance. The audience erupted in cheers, their biomechanical limbs flashing as they waved in excitement. Visk turned toward Elias with an amused smirk. Human, any last words? Elias gave him a lazy grin. Yeah. You talk too much. The signal blared. KLRA charged, his augmented legs propelling him forward at impossible speed. His fist, reinforced with nanosteel, hurtled toward Elias with enough force to pulverize concrete. But the human was already gone. A reflex beyond machines. Elias moved with a speed no AI-assisted mind could predict. He sidestepped KLRA's punch with an effortless grace, his muscles reacting before conscious thought. The alien warrior's strike missed by inches, smashing into the ground and shattering the arena floor like brittle glass. But before KLRA could adjust, Elias was already in his blind spot. A single, devastating strike to the throat. KLRA's cybernetic lungs wheezed, his reinforced trachea cracking under the sheer force. He stumbled back, eyes wide in shock. That wasn't supposed to happen. The crowd murmured in confusion. Elias hadn't dodged like an enhanced being would. No predictive algorithms, no artificial speed boosters. Just instinct. KLRA recovered, his systems recalibrating. Impossible. The human shouldn't have been able to react in time. No biological being could. Rage filled him, and he unleashed a flurry of attacks, each one calculated by his combat AI to be undodgeable. His arms moved in a blur of metal and plasma, turning into a hurricane of destruction. And yet, Elias weaved between the strikes like a ghost. His body twisted, ducked, and spun with terrifying precision. No wasted movement. No hesitation. It wasn't enhanced agility, it was something worse. Pure, raw combat instinct. Then the human struck. A single punch, perfectly placed against KLRA's temple. The alien's reinforced skull caved in. He collapsed like a marionette with its strings cut. The once proud cybernetic champion twitched on the ground, his internal systems failing. Silence fell over the Colosseum. Elias Cade had won. No augments. No upgrades. No enhancements. Just human nature. The alien spectators looked at each other in horror. If an unmodified human could do this, then what had evolution turned them into? Elias smirked, walking off the battlefield as the stunned audience whispered among themselves. They had assumed cybernetics made them superior. They had never considered the alternative. They had never asked what humanity had become without them. The Colosseum was eerily silent. A moment ago, it had been filled with cheers, the deafening confidence of 1,000 alien voices proclaiming their cybernetic supremacy. Now all that remained was disbelief. Elias Cade rolled his shoulders as he exited the arena, wiping a bit of KLRA's metallic blood from his knuckles. The fight hadn't been difficult. That was what disturbed the cybernetic species the most. KLRA had been engineered for perfection, augmented with predictive combat algorithms, reinforced skeletal plating, and an AI-assist system designed to counter any biological opponent. And yet, a simple human had defeated him. The announcer, Visk, struggled to find words, his slitted eyes darting between KLRA's unconscious form and the retreating human. The first round goes to the human. Even saying it felt wrong. Elias hadn't used cybernetics. He hadn't needed them. His instincts had outperformed a combat AI. His raw strength had broken reinforced alloys. His reflexes had defied everything they understood about biological limitations. And worst of all, he had made it look easy. The gathering of the augmented. Back in the private chambers of the Colosseum, the greatest minds of the cybernetic species gathered, their metal bodies gleaming under the cold artificial lights. The atmosphere was tense. At the head of the table sat Overlord Kravox, a being who had not possessed an ounce of organic tissue in centuries. His polished chrome faceplate reflected the room's dim glow, his eyes glowing like twin embers. "Explain this," Kravox demanded, his voice a distorted growl. A technician, his neural implants flickering as he processed data, stammered, "The human, he doesn't move like augmented beings do. His reaction time is beyond predictive models. It's like he doesn't even think before he moves." Kravox clenched his mechanical fingers. "That is impossible. Thought precedes action." "Not in humans," another scientist muttered. "They've evolved differently. Their instincts are something we don't understand." Kravox's eyes narrowed. That was the problem. Cybernetic species had spent centuries perfecting themselves, shedding organic weakness for machine efficiency. They had believed themselves to be the pinnacle of evolution. Yet now, a single unmodified human had shattered that illusion. "This will not stand," Kravox said. "The human will fight again." He turned to the chamber's security feeds, watching as Elias Cade leaned against a wall in the preparation room, arms crossed, looking bored. Not victorious, not arrogant, just bored. That unsettled Kravox more than anything. The second challenger, the apex of augments. The second fight was arranged within hours. The next combatant was Vares, a warrior who had replaced everything organic with machinery. There was no flesh left in him, just cold, calculating perfection. His processors could anticipate movements before an opponent even decided to make them. His limbs could strike faster than the eye could perceive. Vares stepped into the arena, his frame humming with kinetic energy. Elias entered from the opposite side, cracking his neck. "Another one, huh?" Visk, still rattled from the first fight, took a cautious step forward. "Human, do you wish to reconsider? Your victory was luck. You will not." "Just start the fight," Elias interrupted. The alarm blared. Vares blurred forward. The fatal flaw of perfection. Elias barely moved. Vares's first strike, a devastating, precision-calculated punch, missed by millimeters. He adjusted in a nanosecond, his systems recalibrating. But Elias was already moving. There was no pattern to his attacks. No pre-programmed sequence, no detectable rhythm. Just chaos. Vares's processors screamed as they tried to predict Elias's movements. They couldn't. The human twisted at impossible angles, dodging by margins so small they should have been errors. He wasn't just fast, he was unreadable. And then, in the middle of an attack sequence, Elias did something that broke Vares's systems. He hesitated. For a fraction of a second he pretended to falter, just enough to trick the combat AI into believing it had an opening. Vares lunged. Elias exploited it. A brutal elbow strike to the head. A stomp to the knee. A sudden, unpredictable pivot that no machine could comprehend. Vares collapsed, his systems overloaded. He twitched on the ground, sparks flying from his cybernetic skull as his predictive algorithms failed to comprehend what had happened. The realization. The silence in the Colosseum was even heavier than before. Elias exhaled, rolling his shoulders. Damn. Thought he'd last longer. The cybernetic spectators, beings who had considered themselves the next stage of evolution, watched in horrified realization. Machines were predictable. Humans were not. Elias wasn't faster than the cybernetic warriors. He wasn't stronger. But his brain, his instincts, his very nature had given him an edge that no amount of artificial enhancements could replicate. Cybernetic perfection had a flaw. And that flaw was the very thing they had long discarded, human adaptability. From the control chamber, Overlord Kravox watched in stunned silence. For centuries, they had believed that replacing flesh with metal was the only path forward. Now, watching Elias Cade stand victorious once again, unmodified, unconcerned, and unimpressed, he realized something that filled his circuits with dread. They had made a mistake. Overlord Kravox sat motionless in the observation chamber, his processors running at maximum capacity. The data from the fights was conclusive, and it terrified him. Humans weren't just unpredictable. They were fundamentally incompatible with cybernetic battle doctrine. Every calculation, every strategy their kind had refined over centuries, all of it fell apart against an opponent who didn't follow the rules. Kravox turned toward his advisors. Deploy Subject Zeta. A hushed murmur spread through the chamber. Overlord, one of his strategists spoke cautiously, Zeta is unstable. His augmentation levels exceed standard combat limits. Even our own cannot best him in controlled engagements. Then he should be more than enough to crush one unmodified human, Kravox said, his voice tinged with something unrecognizable. Was it doubt? A different kind of opponent. Elias Cade sat in his holding room, casually picking at a small bruise on his knuckles. He had seen fear before. He had seen warriors hesitate. But never like this. The cybernetic species weren't just shaken, they were desperate. They didn't understand what they were up against. He flexed his fingers, thinking back to Varesa's collapse. The cybernetic warrior had broken, not just physically but mentally. His AI had overloaded trying to predict something that couldn't be calculated. Now they were sending something else. He could feel it in the air. The arrival of Subject Zeta. The moment the arena doors opened, Elias felt it. Wrongness. The thing that stepped onto the battlefield wasn't just cybernetic. It was something else. Its frame was hulking, a grotesque fusion of metal and warped organic matter, as though whoever had designed it couldn't decide what to keep and what to replace. Its arms were unnaturally long, its reinforced plating pulsing with something unnatural. Sparks crawled along its exoskeleton, and when it turned its head toward Elias, its eyes weren't machine. They were still human. But there was nothing left inside them. A synthesized voice echoed from its chest. You are an anomaly. Elias exhaled through his nose. You guys really don't know when to quit, huh? The arena gates sealed. The fight begins. No countdown. No warning. Zeta attacked instantly. Elias barely ducked in time as a massive arm crashed down where he had been standing, the sheer force of it cratering the metal floor. He pivoted, dodging another strike, only for Zeta's other arm to bend unnaturally and swing backward mid-motion, something that should have been impossible. Elias twisted his body, barely avoiding it. Zeta's speed was wrong. No wasted movements. No pattern. It wasn't predictable like the others. It was learning. Elias grinned. Now this is interesting. Beyond the limits, the fight that followed wasn't like the others. Elias had toyed with KLRA. He had outmaneuvered Vares. But this was a war of instincts. Zeta never stopped attacking. Every time Elias moved, the abomination adapted. Its limbs twisted, extended, retracted, sometimes with zero indication. The cybernetic warriors watching from the stands couldn't even track the fight. Zeta's strikes were inhumanly fast, but Elias wasn't fighting on human time. His body reacted before his mind could process it. No thought. No hesitation. Pure survival instinct. The fight blurred into a brutal, high-speed exchange, two forces that shouldn't exist in the same reality. Zeta, an apex predator of cybernetic technology. Elias, an organic paradox that refused to be understood. The final exchange. For the first time since the battles began, Elias felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement. Zeta lunged. Elias met him halfway. The impact cracked the arena floor. Zeta's reinforced plating fractured. Elias's muscles strained. The world froze, for less than a second. And in that second Elias saw it. Zeta hesitated. The machine inside him tried to predict the outcome. And that was all Elias needed. His fist drove forward. A single unpredictable strike. Zeta's entire system short-circuited. The cybernetic colossus collapsed, sparks cascading from its shattered frame. The fight was over. Elias stood over the wreckage, rolling his shoulders. He wasn't even breathing hard. Well, he muttered. That was fun. The end of the illusion. In the control chamber, Overlord Kravox's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. This was wrong. Every advancement, every cybernetic enhancement, it meant nothing against this thing. No, not a thing. A human. Kravox had spent his entire existence believing cybernetic life was the future. Now, staring at Elias Cade standing victorious, he realized something he had never dared to consider. Maybe, just maybe, they had gotten everything backwards. Overlord Kravox stood motionless in the control chamber. His systems were fully active, his processors running thousands of scenarios, yet he could not comprehend the data before him. The battle was over. Subject Zeta had fallen. Not to another cybernetic warrior. Not to an advanced AI or an elite combat algorithm. But to a human. A creature of flesh and instinct. Kravox clenched his metallic fingers. His people had spent centuries perfecting cybernetic augmentation, refining warriors into something beyond organic limitations. And yet, that very perfection had been their downfall. Their systems needed order. Their algorithms relied on probability. Humans, in contrast, thrived on chaos. This could not be allowed. He turned to his council, his voice sharp. Deploy all available enforcers. That human does not leave this station alive. A ripple of hesitation moved through his advisors. One finally spoke. Overlord, if he fights back, we may not be able to stop him. Kravox's processor stalled at that thought. The fact that such a statement could even be uttered. It was the death of everything he had believed. Elias versus the Legion. The sound of metal boots marching in unison echoed down the corridor. Elias Cade cracked his knuckles. He had barely stepped out of the arena when the alarms started blaring. They were sending everyone. He grinned. Guess they took that personally. The first wave came fast. 10 cybernetic enforcers, their movements sharp, controlled, efficient. But Elias had already seen their kind before. And that was the problem. They weren't ready for him. He moved like a force of nature. His body blurred through the gaps in their formation, a whirlwind of devastating punches and lightning-fast counters. A strike to the jaw disabled targeting sensors. A stomp to the knee shattered reinforced plating. A downward blow disconnected neural links. 10 cybernetic warriors hit the floor before the others even processed what had happened. The next wave was 50 strong. It didn't matter. The fall of cybernetic supremacy. Overlord Kravox watched the security feed in silent horror. For every 5 warriors they sent, Elias cut them down in seconds. For every adjustment their algorithms made, he adapted faster. It wasn't just that he was stronger. It wasn't just that he was faster. It was that he was unpredictable. Their cybernetic forces, their entire way of war, had been built on calculation, on probability. But Elias Cade was pure instinct. An instinct could not be predicted. The final stand. The doors to Kravox's chamber slammed open. Elias stepped inside, brushing cybernetic dust off his shoulder. All right, Tin Man, he said casually. Let's talk. Kravox stood. For the first time in his existence he was afraid. You. The words felt foreign to him. You are an anomaly. Elias smirked. Yeah, I get that a lot. Kravox's mind raced. Was this truly evolution? Had they, in their obsession with control, become weaker? The thought was unbearable. You should not exist, he whispered. Elias tilted his head. And yet here I am. Silence filled the chamber. Then Kravox did something no overlord had done in 1,000 cycles. He dropped to his knees. Leave, he said. We will never come for your species again. Elias blinked. That's it. Kravox's voice was hollow. Cybernetic evolution is flawed. He looked up at Elias with something almost like reverence. You have taught us a truth we cannot ignore. Elias exhaled. He hadn't expected it to be that easy. But then again, when your entire civilization just had its core beliefs shattered, what else could they do? He turned to leave. At the door he paused. You know, he said over his shoulder, you guys are smart. You'll figure out something new. Maybe stop trying to erase what makes you, you. And with that, Elias Cade walked away, leaving behind a broken empire that would never be the same. Humans. Unpredictable. Unstoppable. And now unrivaled. Like what you heard. Subscribe for more epic HFY stories.